Chapter 6. The Intimacy of a Mark. I laid down on his bed under the covers with nothing on except my panties. The bra that I wore were on his floor. I covered myself up with his blanket, but he cut that short. He pulled the cover off of me, and I immediately covered myself up off my broken arm before he got on top of me. "You ready?" he asked me. "Yes," I breathed out. Immediately, he crashed his lips onto mine. I wrapped my arm around his head, wanting the kiss to deepen. My legs were already wrapped around him. I grinded underneath him, feeling his hard length pressed against my area. He moved from my lips, planting kisses all the way to the right side of my neck. I moaned as his tongue circled slowly around a particular part of my neck. When his tongue moved up to my ear, I could feel my area getting wet. He was turning me on with no problem. He made me feel so damn good, and he was not even fucking me. I dug my nails into his back. I wanted to scream his name, but he forbid me from saying it. Instead, I decided to call him what my mind was screaming since this intimate moment started. "Daddy. Yes, Daddy." He grabbed a fistful of my hair and turned my head to the left. He pressed his lips against my neck, and this time, I felt his fangs against my skin. "I'm scared." He nodded before his fangs punctured my neck. I gasped, burying my face into his shoulder. The first part burned for a few minutes, but it was deceased with an unbearable pleasure that I did not expect. My broken arm began to feel a lot better than before. I was able to move it without feeling any pain. I moved my hand in between our body and placed my hand at the entrance of his boxers. When I put my hand inside, I gasped. He was not a small guy at all. My hand could not grip the whole thing. Oh my gosh. This made me crave him some more. As he fed on me, I was able to get his boxers down. He shook his head, but I ignored him. I needed to feel him in me. He pulled his fangs from my neck and got up. I got up and grabbed his arm. He looked at me, and I crashed my lips against his. I guided his hand inside of my panties, and he began to rub my area. I moaned into the kiss as he pleasured me with his hand. He moved to my collarbone, and he licked the blood that was spilling from my neck. "I said no," he said to me softly. "Please, I beg you." He pulled away from me, and I sat up on his bed, turned on. He looked at me, shaking his head. "No sex," he said, and he walked out of the room. What a fucking tease, I thought to myself. I groaned while I got off his bed and grabbed my bra off the floor. I put my bra back on before I walked out of his room, irritated and horny. My panties were still soaked from that fucking shit he did to me early. As soon as I got towards the bed, I plopped onto the bed and stuffed my face into the pillow. There was a knock on the door. I lifted my head up and saw Kane with a woman in a maid's uniform. I sat up and looked down at the ground, not looking at them. "I have to leave," Kane told me. "I have business to handle. Carla is going to come over with Kieran, so at least you will have company. I will be back later on today at around 10 a.m. I expect breakfast around that time. Also, I will have some clothes for you today, okay?" I nodded. He walked over to me and flicked my forehead hard. I covered my head and looked up at him. "What did I tell you about nodding?" he asked me. "I'm sorry," I told him. He shook his head at me, then turned to walk off. The maid looked me over before she turned and walked after Kane. I swear, the way she looked at me, I felt like she had a thing for him. I mean, I could not blame her. Kane was sexy as fuck. He was tall, about 6'9". His eyes were red, his hair was black and long, so he had it in a long braid that went past his shoulder. His lips, oh my gosh, his lips. Just thinking about them against mine made me think about him again. They were so soft and amazing. He was a great kisser, and he had me stuck when his lips pressed against mine. His body was of a god. He was stocky built, but muscular. He had a perfect six-pack, and his chest was not flabby or anything. Plus, he had a nipple ring and tattoos. I covered my head as I could feel myself getting turned on by thinking of him. I crossed my legs and covered my breast. Damn it, Kane, I whispered to myself. Why did you do this to me? I heard running up the stairs and Carla came into my room. She looked around and nodded her head. I was happy to see her. At least Kieran let her come over while they handled their business. I like your room, she said as she came over to the bed. I nodded my head. Thanks, I said with a dull tone. How are you? Has Kieran treated you right? Yeah, why wouldn't he? I shrugged my shoulder and she gave me that look. Is he hurting you? She asked me. No, not at all. Then what's wrong? Carla stared at me, waiting for me to tell her. Maybe Kieran was like that with her as well. Maybe it was not just Kane. It's nothing, I told her, forcing a smile onto my face. How was it with Kieran? She smiled and nodded her head. Did he mark you? I asked her. Yeah, during sex, she announced.